Hello Internet. Today I'd like to review this Northridge fix flux that I just ordered. He didn't send it to me for review or anything. I bought it out of my own curiosity. And right out of the box, there is something I do not like. If you look closely at this syringe, you can see that the flux, hopefully you can see this, it is highly saturated with air bubbles, which is a very big problem, and especially considering the trapped pocket of air that's inside there that we cannot get rid of under no circumstances. I mean, I can probably try to heat up the flux so that it's gonna drain itself down to the bottom, potentially removing all the bubbles that are trapped there. See, I do this with all of my flux, so that way, see, like this one here, no bubbles trapped inside. So what that does, it prevents flux to leak out when you're done using it. So you squeeze out a little bit that you want and then put your syringe away, and it continues on running out. And all of that is because of the trapped air inside. So I'm going to try to fix this bubble thing issue first, and then I'm going to try to see how well it works for reballing these memory chips. And then I will do some tests and see if I can, if it's suitable for micro soldering as he claims, if it turns dark, if it turns hard, if it smells, if it smokes, if it evaporates. A lot of the claims that he made, we'll test that today and see if it passes. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to start heating up the syringe, holding it down like this, you know, and just kind of warm it up slowly until I start seeing flux starting to run down the walls. And then we'll see, maybe we can heat it up a little bit more to get rid of the bubbles in there. We'll see. Normally this doesn't do anything to the flux, although it might change its texture a little bit, but I don't think it's gonna degrade its ability to do its job in any meaningful way. So I do this to all my flux, and so far I'm having a great success. And already, without spending too much time, a lot of it has already dropped all the way down there. You can see the bubble is trying to escape. So that's good. It doesn't take a lot of heat to melt this flux, so we can probably continue and see if we can purge any of the bubbles that are trapped within the flux itself, and I'll show you the result when I'm done. And there we have it. The flux is now at a room temperature, almost bubble free, just one little bubble trapped in the very top. We will just push that into the syringe, into the needle, and there we have it. So that's it. So we are ready to start using this flux. Okay, so one thing I noticed immediately is that the needle here, this brown needle, is way too big for the thickness of the flux. So I'm gonna put in a pink needle here instead. This is gonna be a smaller needle, and it comes off easily. Yeah, so smaller needle is definitely gonna do two things. It'll prevent you from using too much of it, and it will also act as a sort of like a restriction. It'll restrict the flow of the flux out of the syringe by whatever internal pressures may build up inside the syringe. So another benefit of using a smaller needle. Now in here, I'm trying to get these chips removed, and I just started to heat them up, and as you can already see, the flux is already boiling under the chips. Now sometimes that's a good sign. That's kind of it kind of tells me when to when I'm getting to a point of solder starting to melt. But in this case, they seem to be boiling way too soon. So that could potentially cause problems with the BGA. If it's going to continue on boiling once the solder becomes soft, then all that boiling action could potentially result in bridged solder balls. Because if you got all these bubbles boiling inside, they're sort of like tiny little explosions. They have a tendency to move solder balls around as it boils. So you definitely do not want flux that's boiling when you're doing BGA. But we're gonna give it a try and see how it goes. Okay, here's one chip and another. There. The good that I already see is that there is plenty of flux left behind, so that means I don't have to add flux to remove all that solder. So let's go and do that real quick. I also want to see how easy it is to wipe all that once I wick the pads, because some flux likes to get really hard really quick even when the board is still hot, but some flux will stay sort of liquid long after you wick the pads, so it allows you to easily wipe away any flux residue from the board. So hopefully this is the kind of flux that will allow me to do just that. Now we're gonna find out in just a second as soon as I wick these pads. And one more. And let's see, let's go back to the coldest one here. See how easily it wipes. And it wipes very easy. Yeah. It wipes nice. Given the fact that the board is cooled significantly at this point, I'd say this is good. Typically, whatever flux I use will solidify very soon after you clean up the pads. So that way, by the time you get to these with your cotton swab to wipe the board away, it's already too late. So that's why sometimes I have to kind of hurry up or keep the board hot with the preheater while doing everything else. So okay, so here's the chip. This is a Hynix chip. Their pads look similar to Samsung and they suck. They are not perfectly round, and so that makes balls to stick to the pads bigger problem than it would be on any Micron chip, but we're gonna give it a try anyway. I'm gonna try to be as minimalistic as possible with the application, and I will tap the chip to spread it out as evenly as humanly possible. So let's pour some of the balls down in there. See how well they stick. There we go. Now let's take that chip and put it on some kind of a surface, and then we'll see how well it will work, giving it not the most extreme test possible, but a difficult one nonetheless. So let's see. It feels like it's applying thick, and it's a bit more tacky than what I wanted, but I think it might just do the trick. We'll find out. So that's usually how I would apply this using any other flux. So let's see what it will do once we start blowing hot air on this. So as soon as I start blowing, I'm kind of expecting for balls to start shifting, and the direction of the shift is unpredictable. Sometimes it'll shift toward where the heat comes from, or in the opposite direction. It's just hard to say. And usually that's noticeable right away. But in this case, as you can see, I see no shift whatsoever, maybe a little bit. And the balls are just kind of falling into the pads. Relatively easy, except maybe this one here. Maybe give it a little bit of nudge to help. Let's see how the second chip is doing. Okay, the second chip went well. Almost perfect. It feels like I didn't apply enough of the flux. Even though I was very conservative in my application, fearing that the balls are going to start moving around a whole lot, it actually makes sense to apply a little bit thicker, given the fact that they don't seem to move around a whole lot. Yeah, but you're gonna end up a lot more flux left over, so this looks really good. So far, I am actually very pleased with how easy this was. Now, the most extreme test would be to reball GDDR5X chip. Maybe we can do that just for the sake of the giving this thing the most extreme test possible. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, here is GDDR5X from 1070 Ti's or 1080 Ti's. See how well that does. You can see that the balls are perfectly centered, and as we blow, nothing really happens. Nothing really moves. So far, so good. Okay, this is the moment where everything goes haywire. And it looks like everything just soldered rather well. Yeah, it seems like it's a bit dry, so that's actually very impressive. Though it still leads me to believe that a little bit more flux would be needed than I usually do. But I usually try to be very conservative about the amount of flux because balls tend to stick. But it looks like this flux has definitely solved that problem, which is very impressive. I noticed no smell, no smoke, so that's good or bad. I don't know, just depends on how you like it. A little bit of smell, some kind of a pleasant smell would be nice, but it's not here, so whatever. So let's go ahead and put these chips back on the board. Given the fact that this thing likes to boil under the BGA, I am not going to put this on purpose. Because I do not want balls. I do not want balls to bridge while they're with the flux that's boiling. So instead, I'm going to put in either the V2 or the V3 from Steery that I use exclusively for reballing. This V2 and the V3, they are nearly identical, even visually. Though this one the V3 is thinner. V2 is thicker, that's the only difference. So I have a bigger syringe here than I have it here. I think V3 is a bit more pleasant when it comes to smell and whatnot, whereas this one's a bit more, whatever. They both smell real nice, and I use very little of them, so I kind of like it. It gives me a nice smell, and not the most expensive in the world. You can buy it in large quantities from Stiri. That's always a big plus. With Northridge Fix, however, you will not be able to buy 100-gram jars. You will only be able to buy these little syringes, and they're gonna drive the price up with the shipping. So yeah, it's just one of those side effects of buying from him, because he's not gonna sell you large amounts. I'd like to buy maybe a 100-gram jar of this stuff, you know, just so that I don't have to pay for shipping every single time. But I doubt that's gonna happen. Maybe if you're one of his subscribers and he replies to your comments, oftentimes maybe you can throw in a suggestion to start doing that, just that, you know, to help a brother out like me who needs more and doesn't want to pay shipping 10 times. So either way, I'm going to finish up with the reball here, and I'm guessing everything's gonna go fine at this point. And then the next we're gonna try some micro soldering. Okay, now before I do any kind of micro soldering, I would like to compare. This is the Northridge Fixed Flux on the right to 213A or whatever TF stuff that I used for micro soldering a lot, because it's not as clear, but once you start soldering, it's actually clear, and it evaporates, so I constantly have to add some. But the benefit of this is that it does not clog the soldering tip, and it does not turn dark brown to a point where I can't see what I'm doing. So allow me to demonstrate. This tip is going to be 210, a little bit larger than I usually use for micro soldering, but that's going to give it a little bit more heat transfer. Right there, you can see how it turns a little bit dark, and it smokes. It smells nice though, and it evaporates. Okay, so now let's try the same thing with Northridge Fix. So there's a lot of bubbling action. Yeah, and it starts to foam, and it starts to get dark, and it starts to foam, so that could be a problem. Almost like, starts to look almost like a burnt sugar. So let's burn this thing off a little longer. Yeah, there you go. So the tip starts to look really bad. Yes, so that's not good. Let's wipe off the tip and do the exact same torture test in here. So this thing does not boil anywhere near as violent, so it seems to do a way better job, and it does not turn dark anywhere near as much as the Northridge Fix does. So by the time we're done, this will probably evaporate. I'd say about the same, with the exception of the Northridge Fix will turn dark a lot sooner compared to this, and it will boil way more violent than the other one. Okay, who cares? Let's look at the micro cracks that I wanted to try to repair. Not so much try to repair, this is a no fix card. I just need to add a little bit of solder mask so that we don't get wires in the way. Alright, so let's put some Northridge Fix flux in here. Let's take micro tip, lay some solder on the tip, and we need to tin these ends of the traces. So that one's okay. There, in here, and in here. and this one here. So far, things are looking okay. There's a wire. That I, for some reasons, cannot grab. Okay, there's one end of that. There we go. That looks like it's a good job. Hard to say. Let's get rid of that remaining of the wire. There we go. And as you would expect, you can see that the flux is starting to turn into a sugar-like substance. It becomes a little bit hard. And let's get rid of that blob. And try to solder the other wire. That could be a problem. That went well. Let's see if we can solder this end just as easily. Right there. Yeah, that was relatively easy. Let's cut that off. Yeah, it gets to a point where it starts to string. Yeah, I don't like it. So let's do a third wire. And the temperatures are not very hot. I'm going 330. That's my normal temperature. Beautiful. So the job is done. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to undo all this and redo it with the other flux that I've been using all that time. So let's get rid of that. Now let's put in my good old 213 or whatever it's called. I have this flux described in my Discord server. You can see that it's kind of cloudy, but it's not too bad. Once you start soldering, it gets clear. See, once you get close to it, it starts to kind of sort of clear itself out. So no problem there. I'm purposely going to burn it a little bit, because we did burn it a little bit with the Northridge fixed flux, and you can see that nothing is gumming up in here, so it stays liquid, and that's exactly what you want. It evaporates, so we just have to continue to add more as we go along. But other than that, that looks like we're gonna need a bit more solder here. I think it's doing a little bit better job than the Northridge fixed flux. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, I don't know. There we go. Beautiful. I really like the way this flux behaves. It constantly evaporates, so I have to add more and more as I go. So that's probably the only annoying thing. It seems like you just never have enough of it, and you just keep adding and adding. You don't have to add a lot. Like the amount that you add is so little that this syringe will probably last me a year or two. You know, there, beautiful. So doing a good job, I guess, with both, but it's what I was afraid of the Northridge Fix Flux do is to start to gum up, start to slowly solidify, become dark and whatnot. So yeah. And so here we are. My final thoughts about the Northridge Fix is that it did extremely well reballing, putting the solder balls onto the chip. So I will definitely be using that just for that one particular purpose. As for everything else, because of its sort of like a thicker nature, so to speak, it reminds me of the original Kingbo RMA 218. This flux is not available in the USA, so there's no way I can buy this. Somebody sent me a couple of samples. It was good, but it's not for BGA. It works really well for like MOSFETs and things like that. But it will also evaporate. It'll also turn thick, and it smells weird. Then there's Chinese fake Kimbo. They claim it to be this, but it's not. This one costs like super cheap. I use it a lot for like removing the cores, removing the chips, and because it's dirt cheap and I can apply as much as I wanted to. Sometimes I do like a general soldering with this too. But when it comes to micro crack repairs, little tiny traces, this one is a clear winner. I have not seen, I've tried a few different brands, few different makes, and I have not seen any flux that would outperform this one here. I don't know if I'll find a link. If I find a product on the internet, I'll probably put a link in the description so you can buy some of this. But this stuff will last you a year. I do use Kingbo for like 3060s and 4080 GPU chips, because their solder balls are smaller and their pads are smaller too. So this one will let the balls move if you apply too much. This one will not, but you're gonna have to apply it very little regardless of what flux you're using. It's just that some of them are behaving differently than others, and but I definitely think this is like the best for reballing the chips. This one is just for general soldering, the fake Kimbo. This one is it works extremely well for crack repairs. This Kingbo is probably general soldering as well. And the V2 from Styria and the V3 are nearly identical. V3 is just a little bit thinner. They both seem to do the exact same thing. They cost about the same, if not the same, and you can buy these in larger quantities as well. And they do turn dark brown. They smell, they clog up your soldering tip. For that reason, I use them only for placing the chips down. They do that really well. So that would be it for this video. Hopefully this was educating, maybe entertaining to some. Who knows? Who cares? But definitely give this thing a try if you're doing the cores, memory chips and whatnot. I would definitely give this one a try, though it's a bit pricey. But you got to keep in mind, if you're using it specifically for reballing the cores, then this will last for a very long time. So definitely worth the money, though I wish I could buy them in a larger quantity to save on that shipping cost. But it is what it is. Goodbye.